Welcome back to Drive Your Thoughts podcast. I'm your host, Master Coach Carrie Marshall, and it's time to go after those goals.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Carrie Marshall, and today I want to talk about your experiences. So we're all out in the world doing all of these amazing things, and it's so interesting to me how you can have two people go, or maybe 77,000 people go to the same exact thing and have very different experiences. So what I want to talk to you about today is how you are 100% in charge of your experience. Now, a lot of people don't like to hear that, and they like to argue about that and say, but wait, there's so many different factors, and what about this circumstance or this huge tragedy that happened? And even in some of the hardest circumstances, you still are in charge of your experience. So I want to give you a couple of examples today and really talk about why taking accountability for your experience is so important. So I was recently speaking at an event, and I love to talk to different people as I'm there. So I was talking to a group of women at the table, and I was asking them, how's the event going? And there were about 8 women at the table, and it was about split. 4 of them were having an amazing time, and 4 of them were pretty checked out. I just wish I could be at home. This has been pretty long. The speakers haven't been that engaging. And so I just kind of asked both groups the same exact questions. Number 1 is, what do you think is creating this for you? Like, what is it? And they all pointed to outside things. Some of them said that the speakers were boring. Some of them said that the speakers were amazing. Some of them were telling me that, the event itself wasn't that creative. They'd been to 100 before. Some of them were just loving all of the little details that were put into it, like having fresh flowers at the table, having, these really cute pens that were perfect for them. And so I just kind of thought it was interesting that in both situations, both groups of women were putting things on the exterior instead of taking accountability for the experience that they were having. Now, listen, the experience was just what it was. There were flowers on their table. There were pens on the table. There were speakers. We couldn't say if they were good or bad. That's opinion, right? But oftentimes what we do is when we look at an experience, we always point to the outside. And so a lot of times when we go and do an experience, maybe that a lot of people have experienced before, people like to think about things that are kind of universal. So let me use going to an amusement park. A lot of times people will ask, well, was it crowded? Like, that's the thing that's going to make the experience good or not. And we know that that has nothing to do with it. And so, another thing that a lot of people like to point to is the weather. So, if you go somewhere and they're like, oh, it was raining, a lot of people are like, oh, so sorry for you. But you have to remember that your experiences that you're creating are not about outside circumstances. So let me give you this example. We took our girls to Taylor Swift, the Eras concert tour in Nashville. And this was a big deal for us for a couple of reasons. Number 1 is we had given them tickets to Taylor Swift a long time, like before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and so she canceled her tour. That was their Christmas present. So their Christmas presents got canceled. And so we got tickets again. And so we were really excited. I'd never been to Nashville before. We were taking all 3 of our kids, my husband and I, and we were taking my mom. And so grandma was coming with us, which was really fun. But if anybody out there is a Taylor Swift fan, you know that on that Sunday show, something happened. It was called a rain show. So we got there early. We were in the venue and the rain started. Now, Taylor Swift has basically a policy that if it's raining, she'll still play. She doesn't care if it's like torrential downpour. She will still play the show. The only thing that she cannot do is she cannot play in lightning. And so we were kind of going back and forth, and then the lightning started. So in Nashville, the outdoor arena, they have a shelter in place. So 77,000 people were at that concert, and they had never had that many people in that venue besides the two previous nights. So this was their first time having that amount of people there. And they had set up a plan for shelter in place, but they'd never executed it before. So it was a little sloppy. That's my opinion. But here's the most important thing is that here we are with 77,000 Taylor Swift fans. And it was very fascinating to see the difference of how people were experiencing this. There were people that were sobbing, like so sad, so freaked out. My girls cried a little bit. There were people that were completely freaking out about everything, just shelter in place in general, maybe high anxiety. I don't know. But they were very much loud, very much making chaos for everybody else. But then there was also this big group of people that were totally fine. And I was just so fascinated by it. I was looking around and I'm like, how are all of these people just totally fine with this? Here we are sheltering in place. They're trying to figure out how to get everybody where they think they can fit everybody. So it's pretty packed. And then I realize, I'm like, look, these people aren't worried. So I start asking people around me, I'm like, hey, why are you so chill about today? Like, why are you totally fine? And somebody next to me was like, Taylor always plays. Like, she won't cancel this. She'll play for sure. Somebody else was like, oh, this is a once in a lifetime experience. I'm never going to come to a Taylor Rain show again. So Taylor Rain show is a big deal in the Taylor Nation. And I just thought it was so fascinating. There were people that would start singing and it was like, concourse to concourse, you would just hear these songs break out. People were dancing in the rain when the thunder stopped. People were trading bracelets, getting to know each other, doing Taylor trivia. I mean, all of these really, really interesting things around us. And I just realized here we are sheltering in place in Nashville, torrential downpour, lightning all around us. It was lighting up the sky. And I was like, I get to decide how to think about this. I'm like, I decide to go with the people that are having a good time because the anxious people, I don't think this is a good time for them. I don't think I want to be there. I don't think I want to be annoyed because there's nothing I can do about it. So I want you to think about your experiences for this summer, because I do think that this is an important thing that we need to talk about, is that oftentimes we go and we have these experiences and we tell ourselves a couple of different things. And I want to talk about the things that hold us back from creating good experiences. So the first thing that I see is that you don't think that it's up to you to decide. So once again, you put it on the exterior things that are happening instead of on the interior. And so once again, you might be saying like, well, it's the weather or it's the crowds or it's this. Remember that you get to decide how to think and feel about all of that. And if you're in it, then why not have a better thought than this sucks? Because that doesn't feel good and it doesn't create the experience for you. The second thing that I see is, and this is especially true when we kind of get in groups that we're trying to impress maybe, or friends, is that we tell ourselves that we have to have the same experience as other people. So I saw this when I was a young mom. I would take my girls to the pool, the public pool, with some friends. And it was kind of the norm that what would happen was the moms, first off, wouldn't get their hair wet. So they'd be in like full makeup and hair done. And it was like, go out to the wading pool with your kids. But then if you had older kids, then you just sit by the side and like get your feet wet or whatever so that you didn't get too hot. Okay. I didn't grow up that way. I am like a dive head first and throw your kids in the pool and teach them how to swim and do the bubbles and all the things. So I remember the first time I went and I thought that I couldn't, like, that's not what moms do. I was like, oh yeah, moms don't get their hair wet. So I sat on the side and I was miserable. I was like, this is awful. I just want to swim. I want to just like float. I want to do all the things. And so I realized after I left and I was like kind of miserable, I was like, you know what? I created that for myself. I'm like, I'm never going to go to the pool again and not like swim with my kids. Like, that's fine that we're with friends and I can hang out with them, but I'm definitely going to be the one jumping in, getting my hair wet, splashing around, running around with my kids, teaching them how to swim, all of the things. So that's the second thing that happens is we kind of think that it needs to be a shared experience. And so instead of going out and creating something for yourself, we find that we just are like holding back the experience that we want to have because our friends aren't doing it or it's not the norm. So really, number 3 is we don't think about what type of experience we want to have. Anytime I go to any retreat, speaking engagement, anything like that, I always, and I do this with my clients too, they'll recognize this. I always ask, what type of experience do you want to create? I paid about $30,000 to go to a mastermind once. And I remember thinking that the thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to come away and think that I got my money's worth for that day. Like that day alone, it was a week-long retreat, mastermind. And I was like, I want to go away every single day thinking that I would have spent $30,000 just for that day. And so I made a list on the plane of like, well, what would that look like? And there was one night in particular that I went to bed and I was like on my way up in the elevator and I was like, what? Was that a $30,000 day? And I was like, no, it wasn't. And so I had this opportunity. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I thought to myself, like, I'm going to make this a 30,000. I got to go and figure out how at midnight to make $10,000 worth of an experience. And I did. And that was really cool. Just so happened that when I went and, I went swimming, I went out to the pool and there was one of the leaders there hanging out, wanting to get their laps in as well. We both did our laps. And then afterwards we got to sit and talk. And it was incredible. That one conversation alone was worth $10,000 for sure. And so it was really fun to be able to see that the experience that I wanted to create there was totally possible. But so often we don't think about the type of experiences that we're wanting to create, right? We just say, I want to go on a family vacation, and then we stop there. Well, let's really think about that family vacation. Let's just use the family vacation as an example, and you can do this with anything else. Okay, so you want to go to Lake Powell, right? That's a really popular spot here in the West, especially where I live in Utah. So, okay, you're going with your family. Well, what are you wanting to create? Are you wanting to create shared experiences? Are you wanting to spend more time with your kids? Are you wanting to hang out and read the entire time and check out and not talk to your kids at all? Are you wanting them to create their own fun? Can you see the different experiences that you could create all in one place, right? Are you wanting to kind of rough it and stay intense? Are you wanting to have like a really high-end experience and stay on one of those amazing houseboats or yachts that are down there? So as you think about all of these things, you have to really think about not only the circumstances, but then you want to think about your thoughts and feelings as well. Do you want to create the connection and the love and, really be dialed in? Do you want to create relaxation and peace and content? Do you want to have adventure? So the reason that I wanted to bring this up is that I just see, let's go back to those women at the table. So often I think that we think that the experience is supposed to dictate how we experience it. We're not supposed to take ownership and accountability that the experience is what we create. So we pay the money, right, to go and do the thing. And then we come and we're like, well, it's not that great. Let me tell you, I've been to some pretty not great as far as circumstantial retreats. I really have. You get there and you're like, okay, the expectation is not being met. We said we were going to be this, and now it's this. We said we would have this person here, and that person didn't show up to speak. I've totally been there before, and it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to ask for your money back, like whatever you want to do. But I'll tell you what, anytime that I've noticed that my expectation hasn't been met, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, I just kind of sit and think to myself like, okay, what do I want to do about not having this expectation met? And then how am I going to change it as quickly as I can so that I can get back to what I want to be doing, which is like having that experience. So, like we're in really crazy accommodations and the person's not coming. And I'm like, great, who do I want to network with here? That's the key. The key is to really remember that you're in charge of your experiences, not anybody else, you. The experience itself, the circumstances around it are not in charge of how you show up and the type of experience you create. So as you get ready to go out and create amazing experiences, remember the experience and what you actually have and focus on is all up to you. I hope this is helpful as you go out and really start to create some amazing experiences for you. Catch you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. If you're ready to get in the driver's seat of your own life, you can come and follow me at Drive Your Thoughts Coaching on Instagram, or come and see more ways to work with me at driveyourthoughts.com.
Yeah, whether ready or not, life's coming hard, no breaks, no stop. And if you put me on the spot, don't get it twisted, I never drop. If you feel a bit out of control and out the box, here's a way that you could drive your thoughts. Turn this podcast on, it's a lock. Carrie Marshall on the clock.